I was saying, y'all, it's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and I'm coming with some major Washington Commanders quarterback rumors. The Washington Commanders draft preference probably leaked as to who we're preferring between maybe Jayden Daniels and Drake May if we're going that route. Also, teams are fighting over Sam Howell. We have more than one team potentially interested in him. We could potentially get a pick higher than what a lot of y'all probably believe. And also, the Washington Commanders have potential to trade back to the 8th overall pick with the Falcons. We're going to talk about all that and more. And also, let me go ahead and preface this with the fact that these are all rumors. So whether I believe these are potentially true or not, I don't care. We're here to dive into the logic behind them and why or why not we should love for these things to happen or hate for these things to happen, basically. Whether these things are true, you know, this is lion season right now. So I'm not gullible and just going to sit here and pretend like all of this stuff. Oh, we might trade Sam Howell for this pick. We looks like we're going to go get this guy, all of that type of stuff. It's still February 25th, man. We're barely deep into the process. So again, we're just ignoring the validity of these rumors. We're ignoring whether these are realistic or not. We're just going to do a deep dive. And I think y'all are going to really love one of these topics that we do, because I'm going to provide an example mock draft for one of them. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, and still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I have so many fun video ideas that I can't wait to get to. They're just sitting there on my screen. I just got to get to them, record them, edit them, and stuff like that. But it's just always one thing after another that pushes those ideas down. But again, like I've said in other videos, I got to get those done as soon as possible, because after a certain point, like after free agency, after the combine and things like that, some of these videos I might as well just go ahead and delete all the notes I have for them before I even attempt to record them. So I got to get a lot of things out, like predictions and reports and things like that, before these certain dates happen. So I got to sprint through those. And then I'm also working on another video that's talking about other Commanders rumors. So this one's specifically quarterback rumors, and then I'm coming with another video probably later tonight discussing other rumors concerning the Washington Commanders, especially when it comes to like free agency and things like that. So stay tuned, and without further ado, let's go and get to it, man. Let's get it. All right, so let's start with the whole Sam Howell side of things first. We have three major topics that we're going to dive into today. We're going to start with Sam Howell, and Ralph Vacciano, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, from Fox Sports, did an article. What he tweeted before you even read the article says the Washington Commanders are recalibrating their franchise, because remember, Dan Quinn said do not call it a rebuild, call it more so a recalibration. What we're doing here, we're reloading, not rebuilding. I know that a lot of college programs say that, especially like Georgia, my Georgia Bulldogs. So that's more so what Dan Quinn's trying to say. Like, well, this is not about to be start from ground zero. We're expecting to go into next season with only 4 wins, basically like last year. We're not going to already just have those excuses preloaded in, like, oh well, you know, we did say before the offseason that we were rebuilding. No, Dan Quinn doesn't want you to give him any excuses, any cop-outs, any way outs on this season. He's like, this is a recalibration, we're trying to win right now type of thing. So going back to Ralph Vacciano, before I just went on that tangent, to do that, their offseason list of priorities starts with settling on their franchise quarterback. And from this article, the most important thing that we take from it is that Sam Howell is gathering trade interest from multiple NFL teams, including the Jets and the Patriots. According to an insider, the Patriots will be speaking to the Commanders during the 2024 NFL Combine in a couple of days regarding a trade for the 23-year-old. And then also the Jets are reportedly looking for a veteran backup quarterback for Aaron Rodgers, and already did a whole video breakdown on Sam Howell potentially going to the Jets and how Jets fans feel about it and things like that. If you want to go check that out, please do, because that was a great breakdown, especially from the Jets point of view, and what draft picks they're willing to give up and things like that, and why trading them to the Jets could make sense for both parties included, all of that type of stuff. But let's go ahead and dive into the article from Ralph Vacciano. And it's a whole lot of different things. Again, it's really just a full breakdown of the Commanders. He's talking about several different things. Like, he's talking about completely rebuilding the offensive line and how we could do that potentially in free agency and the draft. That's a whole nother thing, maybe another discussion for another video. And then also he talks about replacing what they lost on defense. And he notes Montez Sweat, Chase Young potentially losing like a Kendall Fuller. You have options like a Stephon Gilmore out there, maybe Josh Allen, Brian Burns, Daniil Hunter, things like that. So he's done like a full Commanders article, but the most notable one, and it's also the first point that he talks about because I'm pretty sure most people went to the article for this, is he says in the first half of last season, it sure looked like the Commanders had struck gold in the 5th round of the 2022 NFL Draft with quarterback Sam Howell. By the end of the season, he looked more like slightly tarnished silver. There's value, but clearly a lot to clean up first. If it weren't for the regime change, Howell might have had a bright future with the franchise, but with the new brain trust taking over and holding the number 2 overall pick in a quarterback-rich draft, it's hard to believe they won't start over with their own elite prospect. The only question is which one they'll take. People believe around the NFL that new Washington offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury loves USC's Caleb Williams. Now, that's not even a rumor. That's not even a believe. Of course he loves Caleb Williams. First of all, anybody that didn't even get a chance to coach Caleb Williams more than likely loves Caleb Williams, let alone Cliff Kingsbury, who's literally the teacher to Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln Riley is the one that's basically been coaching Caleb Williams since he reached the college level, and even Cliff Kingsbury himself had a chance to help coach Caleb Williams last year as the USC's offensive assistant. So let's go ahead and get that out the way. That's not a believe. We're going to talk about a lot of rumors, a lot of maybes, a lot of almost, a lot of kindas and things like that, but I'm willing to bet my life savings that Cliff Kingsbury wants Caleb Williams. Now, is it enough to convince the Commanders to trade up for him? Highly doubt it, but there's clear interest right there. Even when asked about what his ideal quarterback is, he literally joked and said Pat Mahomes, but he was basically serious like, yeah, man, if I could have Pat Mahomes again like I had at the college level at Texas Tech, that would be perfect, especially seeing what he turned into since he's gotten to the Chiefs. And who do people compare Pat Mahomes to the most? Caleb Williams, as far as coming out of this draft class, or really any recent draft classes. Caleb Williams is the guy that's been compared to Pat Mahomes the most out of any recent past couple of years drafts, any quarterback, all of that type of stuff. But continuing with the article, but they might have to trade up to get him. And if the Bears are amenable to that, they'd reportedly set an enormous asking price. So again, we're not doing that. I highly doubt it. I'd bet money that we're more likely to trade back than trade up. We're going to talk about that later in this video. The Commanders would surely be happy with North Carolina's Drake May 2 and maybe even LSU's Jayden Daniels, but it's a really strong bet that a new quarterback is coming, whoever it is. They'd be wise then to re-sign veteran Jacoby Brissett as a veteran insurance to be the rookie's mentor. But what about Sam Howell? So we say all of that to get to what's going on with the Sam Howell side of things. You draft a quarterback, we're assuming that you're probably going to trade away a Sam Howell, right? And he says multiple NFL sources believe several teams will be interested in trading for the 23-year-old who threw for 3,946 yards and 21 touchdowns and 17 starts last season. A bet an NFL worst 21 interceptions as well on top of that. And let's stop there. He said multiple NFL sources believe several teams. We're going to talk about the Jets and the Patriots here. Those are the two teams that are already reportedly being linked to potentially trading for Sam Howell. But the way that he said several teams sounds like it may just be more than those two. So is there potentially a market for Sam Howell? And for the Commanders' point of view, the reason that a potential market could be great is, first of all, that's more likely for us to just trade them in general, especially if you want to draft a quarterback with a 2nd overall pick. It's like you kind of might as well. But I could also see the argument where you prefer to keep Sam Howell to compete with said quarterback or whatever, and at the very worst be his backup quarterback option, maybe. But if there's a market out there for Sam Howell, most importantly, that means potentially outbidding each other. If one team's willing to offer a 4th, but another team gets more desperate and is willing to offer a 3rd, what if that other team is like, well, we'll offer a better 3rd, or we'll throw in a 3rd and like a 5th to beat them? And like, you know, when the market starts, that's when teams start to outbid each other, and that could only produce positive results for the Washington Commanders. That would only be a good thing. And so he goes on to say that they could potentially get a 3rd round pick for him, maybe more. And that's news to me, because when I did that Sam Howell breakdown about how the Jets could potentially trade for him, I talked about more so like a 4th round pick, 3rd round pick would be nice, but I wasn't sure if that was realistic. And then I even brought up the fact that some Jets fans were willing to give up 3rd round picks. Now we're seeing from sources around the NFL, and of course it's Lion season, like I said before the intro, who knows if this is true or not, but people are saying that you could probably get a 3rd round pick for him or more. And when we're saying more, are we saying 3rd round pick on top of another pick like a 5th or a 6th, or are we talking about moving from 3rd to 2nd round? Like, what we talking? And either way, that's a huge win for the Commanders. I mean, that's really trapping out the NFL to basically flip a 5th round pick and turn it into a 3rd or better. Come on, dog. Like the NFL Commanders, man, we finessing everybody at that point. That's jug season. Now, He also continues on saying, that's if they decide they're willing to deal him sometime around the draft, though. So I think he's emphasizing that we could get more value from a Sam Howell trade somewhere closer to the draft or during the draft or something like that. So that's why even as of March 13th, once trades are allowed to happen around the NFL, we may not see Sam Howell moved immediately because his value will probably increase by the time we get closer to the draft. So don't expect that to happen, because I know some people, again, this is lion season. Who knows if this is true or not, but I know some people will probably think by, say, like the end of March, Sam Howell hasn't been moved. Maybe that report from February 25th was lying or something like that. But he's basically pointing out the fact that the trade may not happen soon regardless. It may happen, but it may happen closer to the draft than closer to today. And then he also pointed out the fact that a team like the New York Jets, who knows they'll need a quarterback of the future when they experiment with 40-year-old coming off of an Achilles injury that kept them out of the entire last season, basically, Aaron Rodgers ends, would be wise to make a call. And when Aaron Rodgers, I mean, honestly, from the Jets side of things, and I didn't even talk about this in my Jets Sam Howell video breakdown. I went really in depth with other things, but a point that I didn't bring up in that video is that, yeah, with Aaron Rodgers getting older, and if Aaron Rodgers plays like you hope you do, like if you're a Jets fan, best case scenario, Aaron Rodgers is healthy and he balls out like you want to go to the playoffs and things like that, you'll never be in pick range of potentially getting your next elite quarterback after an Aaron Rodgers. I mean, granted, you messed up number 2 overall pick with Zach Wilson. That didn't go too well. But with Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback, the reason that you traded for him is to win games. And if you're winning games, you won't necessarily have a chance to get one of those top elite quarterbacks coming out of a draft anytime soon. So if everything goes according to plan like you want it, so this may be your best chance of having a guy ready to go in after an Aaron Rodgers to be your franchise quarterback in a Sam Howell, who has shown that when he's at his best can look like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. But then when he's at his worst, he looks like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL and looks like he can't even be a backup at times. So it's a really interesting situation. But if you're the Jets, if you trade for Sam Howell this offseason, Aaron Rodgers at least gives you 1 or 2 more years, hopefully healthy from their point of view, then Sam Howell can just sit back, learn, be groomed, and develop, work on all of the get all of the kinks out of his game, try to get rid of his weaknesses, at the very least learn how to mask them. And by the time Aaron Rodgers is ready to move on, now you have your franchise quarterback and you don't even have to draft him. So I can see the point of view from the Jets. And again, going back, it's being reported from another insider that the Patriots are apparently speaking to the Commanders once this combine comes in a couple of days to potentially trade for him as well. So those are 2 teams whose names are linked to Sam Howell, Jets and Patriots. We'll see if there are any other teams. Again, he said several teams, but those are the only 2 that we're hearing about by name. Also, shouts out to Burgundy Blog, because I completely agree with this. I like Howell. Will probably have a long career, probably get another crack or 2 at starting. But if Washington drafts its quarterback of the future in April, I'd move Sam Howell for a day 2 pick. Experienced vet, as in Brissett, is probably a more fitting backup anyway. And I completely agree there. I mean, I love Sam Howell, but if you can flip that 5th round pick into a 3rd or better, you do that immediately. And even as much as I feel like the Commanders more so failed him than he failed the Commanders last year, if you can get a 3rd round pick or better, you gotta do it. I feel like, especially if you're already planning on taking your franchise quarterback number 2 overall, that's best case scenario right there as far as what you could potentially get for a Sam Howell. I was worried just last month that I was like, man, if we could potentially get a 5th back for him, the 5th round pick that we used on him, that would be decent. And then I started talking about how from the Jets side of thing, we could potentially maybe even get a 4th, and now people are talking about 3rd round pick or better. Boy, they better do that. This regime has no attachment to him. The only people that are the same here is his quarterback's coach and Bobby Ingram, the wide receivers coach. Everybody else is different. Every single person else is different. So they have no attachment to him. They will move him in a heartbeat. Just to warn y'all, if you're a Sam Howell guy that wants to keep Sam Howell, if there's a scenario where you could trade him away for a 3rd round pick, then it's gonna get done, especially with him still cheap, couple of more years left on his rookie deal. That's actually sounded more realistic by the day. But again, it's Lion season. Now, next up, speaking of Lion season, let's get to the Drake May part of this video. Well, apparently, the Falcons want to trade up for a quarterback in the draft, with Drake May being one of the quarterbacks they are interested in. So if the Falcons want to trade up, would they potentially want to trade up to number 2 overall to get a Drake May? Because a lot of people feel like Drake May is the second best quarterback in this draft. So would the Commanders consider trading down from number 2 overall to number 8? Because we are technically in a rebuild mode, even though Dan Quinn wants to call it a recalibration. And the logic is, honestly, the more picks, the better in a lot of situations, especially with Adam Peters making your selections. And then Mr. Analytics himself, Eugene Shin, said that 2 later picks are better than 1. He literally said that 2 later picks are better than 1 earlier one. So there's definitely a chance that we could trade back. And even though I do prefer to take quarterback number 2 overall, and my preference is Jayden Daniels, but I would be really happy to take Drake May as well, number 2 overall. I'm happy either way. But my preference is to take quarterback at number 2 rather than trade back. Let's go ahead and make that clear. But trading back to the Falcons for the 8th overall pick could also be a pretty good option. I don't necessarily love that option, but I wouldn't flip tables over it. Like, I wouldn't be an upset Commanders fan and threaten to never watch the games again. I can see the advantages to really any route that they could choose to go with. First of all, like I've already said in other videos, I have full faith that whatever this front office and coaching staff decides to do, it's going to be what's best for the team. Like, if what they choose to do is different from what I want them to do, I'm fully behind it as a fan no matter what. And I'm just going to assume that they know way more than me and that they made the right decision, even if it's not the popular one or the one that I had as my preference. And secondly, I feel like they really can't miss. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would have to have generational incompetence to mess up the number 2 overall pick right now in a draft like this. Yeah, we can debate about which option is best, but I don't really feel like there's a literal wrong answer which we could do. There's better, there's best, but no wrongs in my opinion, if you feel me. So once we secured the number 2 overall pick, in my opinion, we won. We won the offseason already. We won the draft. From there, again, unless you have generational incompetence, like Dan Snyder level stuff, I don't think we could really mess it up. But back to that trade, all the way going back to the 8th overall pick. Let's look at who could still potentially be available there for us. And I'm assuming that you're rolling with Sam Howell as your starting quarterback at that point and signing a veteran quarterback to be his backup, maybe even go and bring back a Jacoby Brissett. And again, I prefer to draft Jayden Daniels or Drake May there. Just want to keep saying that, especially Jayden. But I also prefer to keep Sam Howell if we're going to trade back and then draft an elite tackle or a tight end or another elite position over trading back to take one of those other quarterbacks in this draft. If it's between like trading back to get Michael Penix or Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy, I prefer instead to take an elite tackle, a Brock Bowers or Marvin Harrison Jr., something like that, and then just go ahead and roll with Sam Howell as our quarterback. Me personally, I feel like the worst decision we can make is trading back and taking one of those top quarterbacks with our first round pick. Now, if one of those guys makes it to one of our, like maybe our late 2nd round pick or one of our 3rds, then maybe. But don't trade back and take one of those other quarterbacks. I'm begging y'all. That's the one decision where I'm like, but again, I have faith that no matter what they choose to do, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to find a way to convince myself. So moving on, assuming that we trade back and Howell is our starting quarterback in 2024, if you trade back to number 8, you know, depending on what big board you look at, maybe Olufashanu is available. Maybe Brock Bowers is available, my dog. You know what I'm saying? I would love to get him. You never know. Malik Neighbors, maybe. Dallas Turner as an edge rusher. Roma Dunze. There's a lot of talent that would be available there. Latu, however you pronounce his name. I still don't exactly have his name perfectly down. Jared Verse. I mean, there's a lot of edge rushers. There's a lot of tackle talent. I mean, Amarius Mims, even if you trade back further than 8th, you could potentially get the highest ceiling tackle I've seen come out of a draft in years. And maybe you can secure him to be a starting left tackle. You never know. There's so many options there. There's so much elite talent that you could potentially still get at 8th overall if you want to at least give Sam Howell one more chance and build the team first and then add the quarterback maybe in the 2025 draft if Sam Howell doesn't work out. And also, don't forget, us trading back to pick number 8 wouldn't just simply be a pick swap. Number 2 pick for number 8 pick, that's it. We would also be able to get a lot of great picks in return, especially with the number 2 overall pick, which is why, again, I emphasize, once we secured the number 2 overall pick, we won. Because you know how fantastic it would be if we did trade back. Again, I prefer to take Jayden Daniels and Drake May number 2 overall. But if we did trade back, imagine what a guy like Adam Peters that finds all pros and pro bowlers in every round of the draft could do with more picks. Y'all know I hate the Falcons too. Let's go and get this out the way. So I'm not really in the business of conducting business with them. and allowing them to potentially get an elite quarterback for their franchise. For y'all, a lot of y'all out there, that would be like the equivalent of us trading back so the Cowboys can move up to get an elite quarterback. So if y'all feel me that way, you can understand why I'm like, hey, the Falcons, why them out of anybody, man? Listen to anybody but them. But at the end of the day, just to continue the scenario, if we were to trade back from number 2 to number 8 in the draft, it is a potential that we can get the 43rd, 74th, and 110th pick from the Falcons, and their first rounder and third round pick from next year. And all we got to do is give up our 138th overall pick in the deal. Swap 2 for 8, and then we gain 43, 74, 110, next year's first, next year's third, just for 138. That's crazy. So then when you're looking at our draft picks going into this upcoming draft, based on that trade back, you have the 8th overall pick, 36th, 40th, 43rd, 67th, 74th, 101st, 103rd, 110th, 181st, and 220th. That's crazy in a draft like this, where that 2nd to 4th round is really a sweet spot, and Adam Peters making your picks. That could be huge, man. We could turn this franchise around immediately. I mean, we could truly be, if Sam Howell pans out in that scenario and he can actually go out there and be a starting quarterback, you have a good offensive line, a good offensive coordinator, and we actually can get the first half of the season out of Sam Howell, but consistently throughout a season, over and over again, over the course of several seasons. Imagine what you could, I mean, we could literally be the Texans from number 2 overall pick to whatever you do, take your quarterback, trade back, whatever, but number 2 overall pick to winning a division and even winning a playoff game. There you go. And then again, we will also, of course, have the 2025 Falcons first round pick and their third round pick, which will give us 2 firsts, a second, and 2 thirds, along with our normal 1 pick in every other round. And so then moving on, look at who we ended up getting with those picks. Olu Fashanu from Penn State. A lot of people feel like he's the best overall tackler in the class. Joe Alt is the safest. Olu Fashanu's like the most well-rounded, and Amarius Mims has the highest ceiling. It's kind of like pick whichever one you prefer to take your chance with. And also, you could argue that Olu Fashanu, a lot of people feel like he's maybe like the Trent Williams type of guy. Like that's his close comp. But some people do like Joe Alt more, and I can see it because even if you go back to the time when Penn State played Ohio State versus Notre Dame when they played Ohio State, Joe Alt did play better against the same exact competition, the same exact edge rushers than an Olu Fashanu. But again, when you're talking ceiling, I can see why some people it's hard to compare anybody to a future guaranteed Hall of Famer like a Trent Williams, but some people say that that's the closest thing we've seen to a Trent Williams come out of the draft in a while. I can see it a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but he's an elite tackle that you can get in this draft, arguably the best tackle in the draft. And then round 2, Jatavion Sanders, the tight end. I mean, that would be electric. With this Cliff Kingsbury offense, how they can utilize him, what he did with Zach Ertz after the Cardinals traded for him a couple of years ago when Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach for the Cardinals, the season that he got out of him, imagine Jatavion Sanders basically being utilized the same exact way. I think it would be ridiculous. Then edge rusher-wise, Darius Robinson, man, the world's best kept secret is out, bro. It's out. I just see people talking about him more and more every week that passes. He was a big sleeper at one point in time, but now everybody's talking about him, especially after the Senior Bowl. We would be lucky to be able to get him with our 40th overall pick. You may have to take him late first. Honestly, even outside of this trade back scenario, if you want Darius Robinson, you probably got to package your 2 second overall picks, second round picks, and trade up into the late first to get him. But if you're taking quarterback, 2nd overall, then you probably, if you're going to trade up back up into the 2nd round, you're trading up to get a tackle like a Troy Fautanu or something like that. But man, I would love to get Darius Robinson, man. I think he's going to be ridiculous. His best days are only ahead of him. He's only going to be better than what he was in college. Super excited about it. Extremely underrated. Then safety Javon Bullard. I'm not even going to dive into that. Just don't sleep. You'll see. Come back next year and we'll talk about Javon Bullard. Then linebacker wise, I could have gone Junior Colson, who you see on the screen, or Jeremiah Trotter from Clemson. Either way, take your pick there. Cedric Van Pran, I would feel like that's a steal in the 3rd round. Berkey Irvin, the running back from Oregon, to add him to the offense that Cliff Kingsbury wants to run. Come on, dog. Bro, that's ridiculous. Then Spencer Rattler, the biggest boom or bust quarterback in this draft class. Like, if you're talking about the potential of what he could be ceiling wise and the potential of what he could be floor wise if he doesn't work out, it's probably the widest gap out of any quarterback in this entire draft class, man. Like, on his best day, on his best drive, in his best quarter, on his best play, he literally is up there with like Caleb Williams. But the problem is that's so few and far in between, and he just has so many moments where he's just drastically inconsistent. I could easily see him making it to the 4th round, and at that point, why not take a chance on a guy with that much talent, that much natural talent? And then Dominic Pooney, who you could argue was one of the best standouts from the Senior Bowl. He could play tackle, guard. He was killing it at the Senior Bowl at center. No matter what you need on the offensive line, this is a guy that you can plug and play to start immediately. My recommendation, though, is that don't do him like you did Samuel Cosmi a couple of years ago. Even though this guy can play multiple positions on the offensive line, if there's an injury, he can come in and plug and play. I think he's good enough to start. You decide what you want to groom him to be immediately. Like, as soon as you draft him, or even before you draft him, you have a plan in place. He's going to play tackle for you. He's going to play guard for you. He's going to play whatever. I was taking Cedric Van Pran there, but if you don't take Cedric Van Pran, you go somewhere else with that pick, he could easily be your starting center. Either way, you pick a position right then and there, and you keep them there. You don't keep having them fluctuate all around, back and forth, all throughout a training camp or anything like that. You need to figure out as soon as possible what position you want them at, and you train them to do that immediately. Now, if there is an injury, just in case, break glass in case of emergency, then you can plug and play him maybe at a different position. But my strong recommendation is to not do him how you did Sam Howell a couple of years ago, setting back his development, which is why he kind of got off to a rocky start this season, but then ended the season looking like arguably the best player on the Washington Commanders. The talent was always there. They just did everything they could a couple of years ago to mess up his development, moving him back and forth from guard to tackle. But yeah, this draft class is insane. Now, it's actually really weird because, and this is just kind of off topic, but how I feel about the tight end position, I feel like the guy that's number 1, of course, my boy Brock Bowers, there's a bigger gap between tight end 1 to tight end 2 than any other position in this draft class. Tackle literally depends on who you prefer. There's so many different people who feel like Olu Fashanu's the best, Amarius Mims, Joe Alt. It's more so between Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu, or even a JC Latham. I mean, Troy Fatanu has a lot of fans out there that feel like he's the best tackle potentially. Like, when it comes to edge rusher, there's so many names you can throw out there. When it comes to linebacker and a not very great linebacker class, when it even a quarterback, you have most people feel like Caleb Williams is number 1, but you have a lot of people feel like Jayden Daniels is number 1. Some people feel like Drake May is number 1. And then even outside of Caleb Williams being number 1, there's severe arguments about who's number 2, Jayden Daniels versus Drake May. Or some people even for some reason prefer a JJ McCarthy or whoever other name you throw in there. And then when it comes to safety, corner, running back, there's no real big gaps along anywhere in the draft. So I feel like tight end is the only one where it's Brock Bowers, number 1 pick, and then number 1 player at that position, big gap, number 2 player. Even wide receiver, like Marvin Harrison Jr. is elite, generational, you could argue, but Malik Neighbors is probably right behind him at 1B. Like, I don't think people understand how great Malik Neighbors is for real. It's 1A, 1B. Without Marvin Harrison Jr., people would be talking about Malik Neighbors the way they probably talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. right now. Tight end is the only position where there's a big gap. So I would love to get Brock Bowers, but I would still be very happy with Jatavion Sanders right there in the 2nd round. And again, this draft class is incredible. And I just want to reemphasize, again, I prefer to go ahead and take Jayden Daniels or Drake May number 2 overall, but you would be tripping if you say that isn't a great draft right there. That's an A- at worst, man. That's the type of draft that kickstarts your rebuild and turning yourself into a Super Bowl contender. Still got to, there's still question marks at quarterback technically. I'm assuming that you just have faith in Sam Howell, or you trade back because that's just too much value to give up, even if you don't necessarily believe in Sam Howell that much. But man, especially you got to remember, you come away with those picks, and you also have an additional 1st and 3rd rounder next draft. So when we go to the 2025 draft, we will have 2 first rounders, 2 third rounders, and a 2nd already just off rip. That's incredible value right there if you want to go that route. But even after seeing that draft, I still prefer to get quarterback. Quarterback is king. It's the most important position in the entire landscape of all sports, really. So I would prefer to go ahead and get quarterback right there, but that's just because I'm super high on Jayden Daniels and Drake May. It's not because I'm low on Sam Howell. I'm just that high on either of those 2 guys, especially Jayden Daniels. Now, moving on to the 3rd rumor and the final rumor, speaking of Jayden Daniels, I saw a report that said the Washington Commanders are reportedly doing some extensive research on Jayden Daniels, and remember the Commanders have the 2nd overall pick. And my first reaction was, and I hope so. Like, we better be doing some extensive research. Why wouldn't we be? Why is this news, basically? So I feel like this is coming from NFL rumors, and I know how a lot of y'all feel about them, and that they are just that, rumors. It's not NFL reports, it's NFL rumors, and it's lion season, and this is when they typically generate their most views because of things like that. It is just kind of like, man, like, what are we talking about here, dog? But some people are looking at it as maybe that means that the Commanders are showing signs towards preferring a Jayden Daniels. Maybe they're not doing as much research on Drake May as they're doing on Jayden Daniels. So maybe there's that. I don't know. I've already explained and presented to y'all in other videos that we have connections to every draft prospect. Caleb Williams through Cliff Kingsbury, Jayden Daniels through a couple of coaches, Ryan Clark and things like that. Ryan Clark is Joe Witt Jr., our now defensive coordinator's best friend. We have connections to Drake May and his offensive coordinator and head coach and all of that at UNC. We have connections everywhere. So if we want like background info, even outside of, when we start doing pro days, when we start having draft prospects fly into the DMV to meet with the team, to work out for the team and stuff like that, we start doing interviews outside of the combine and pro days. We could go ahead and do background research right now. We could talk to these guys like offensive coordinators and the guys that see them on and off the field every day. How are they work ethic wise? How are they leadership wise? How are they locker room wise? Film study wise? Are they film junkies? All of that type. We can get that type of information now because we have direct links to all of these guys if we want it, especially with Caleb Williams and Cliff Kingsbury. He's our offensive coordinator now. But it's still kind of like what does that mean? What does that tweet actually mean, dog? Did you assume that the Commanders were not doing extensive research on him? I'm assuming that he's insinuating that they're doing more research on Jayden Daniels than Drake May, but he didn't say that. So even just reading it for purely what it is, and I agree with my boy, Mark Phillips. So the team with the number 2 overall pick that is likely to pick a quarterback that, if it's a good pick, could set the franchise up for 10 years is doing extensive research on one of the prospective top choices at that position. Color me shocked. I mean, I'm looking like, what kind of tweet is this one? Like, nah, duh, like, what are we doing? Duh, man. Of course we doing research on Jayden Daniels, man. So I still wanted to make sure I included that because I just felt like if anything, it was funny. But it's no real serious news. I feel like the previous 2 topics, especially the Sam Howell one, potentially going for a 3rd round pick, is the most notable one. But this one, we pretty much went in order of what makes the most sense, what's the most realistic, what's something you could believe. And we just went to less believable as we went on to now finishing the video with what are we even here for? What are we talking about for real, man? And I just felt like it would be funny to just discuss it. And that's just another thing we could talk about in the comment section. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Let me know how you feel about, of course, everything discussed in this video. I mean that, like the whole Sam Howell potentially going for a 3rd to the Jets, Patriots, or another team. How do you feel about potentially trading back with the Falcons, especially after I gave y'all that example mock trade back and what picks we could get with them? Like, let me know if you were against the trade back before I showed you those picks, but now you've changed your mind and you're actually like, man, that trade back could actually be pretty good. Or let me know if you just straight up take quarterback no matter what. Kind of like me. I prefer quarterback even after looking at that trade back scenario and what picks we could get. I'm still in the boat of taking quarterback, but let me know either way which side you're on. If you were even just trade back even without seeing that from the Falcons, let me know that. And of course, let me know how you feel about the news that the Commanders are apparently doing extensive research on Jayden Daniels and whether that's even noteworthy, any newsworthy type of topic, all of that type of stuff. So let me know. Again, so much content on the way, so many video ideas, so stay tuned. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.